Okay. So Little League rules for a reason. So I want to welcome you to the 2024 District 4 Teenage Baseball Rules Clinic. And we have a few people on here. And I'd like to introduce Grayson Lawrence, who I think probably most of you have met from the scheduling meeting. And he's the District 4 ADA for teenage baseball. Grayson, do you have anything to say?
Hey, yeah, just welcome everybody. Thanks for attending the rules clinic. As Jim said, I did probably meet some of you guys at the scheduling meeting last Thursday. I am the District 4 contact for teenage baseball. So 50, 70 and juniors. Also for seniors, we have a couple leagues that may have seniors later on in the year. So my role with the district is to help coordinate, interleague play for those leagues that want to do interleague play. Gather the contacts, help, identify fields, things of that nature, and also help coordinate a rules clinic like this. I'm not doing the heavy lifting. I want to thank Jim and Don for doing this rules clinic. Also during the season, I'm the point of escalation for anything related to teenage baseball. If you have questions, rule issues, things of that nature, give me a call. My contact information is there. Actually, best is a text or email me, but you can always give me a call if something comes up. With that, I will pass it back to Jim.
Okay, thanks, Grayson. So we have Don Waddell on tonight, and I think at the end he'll be saying a few things. He'll be handling the questions tonight. And myself, I'm Jim Rose. I'm the District 4 ADA for training. So this is a teenage baseball rules clinic. It's designed for coaches, managers, and umpires. I think we have a lot of coaches and managers out there. The focus is rules specific to intermediate and junior league baseball. We're also going to cover new rules for 2024. We'll cover the interleague rules for intermediates and juniors and the points of emphasis that we have for those this year. And hopefully we can also answer any and all of your questions. So that we ask you to keep yourself on mute for the clinic. At the very end, I'll be happy to talk with anyone live. Grayson will stay on. He'll be willing to. Don also. This clinic is being recorded, and like all District 4 rules clinics, the video recordings will be linked on the umpires page on the District 4 website. And that's a link to our YouTube page. And that is the address for our YouTube channel for District 4. If you have any questions tonight, feel free at any point, type those into the chat function. Please address them only to Don Waddell. Don Waddell. And then throughout, we will have a few slides that will be marked with questions. And at that point, we'll address your questions. And we ask you to keep your microphones muted, please. Okay, let's start off with kinds of rules, because I think this people get a little bit confused. Are we playing local rules? Are we playing interleague rules? What kind of rules? So there's actually 4 different kinds of rules, and I just want to go through these rather quickly. So the primary rules that we play under are the official rules and regulations. And they're in rule books. There's one for softball, one for baseball, one for Challenger. You can get these downloaded on your phone for free, whether you have an Android or an iPhone. Just go to your app store and type in Little League Rules, and it is free. And the great thing about it is once you download it to your phone, you never have to download it again, and it will automatically be revised each season every time there's a rule change. So in the official rules are regulations, which cover things like mandatory play, pitching, decorum. But then we have the rules, which are in 9 parts, and you can see those there. So we at District 4 run a 4-part basic rules clinic each year. It's on Zoom. And these cover rules that are found in all divisions of Little League baseball and softball. And those also are recorded. And again, go to the District 4 YouTube webpage, and this is what it looks like. And you can see the first two rules clinics of the season have already transpired, and they are there. So you can look at them at your leisure. We're going to have two more, and those will be tomorrow and the following Thursday. They're from 7 to roughly 8:15, 8:30. They do need registration to get on the Zoom. Just go to the District 4 website. And when you get to the homepage there at the bottom, you can see umpire online training. Don't worry that it says umpire, because the clinics are designed for managers, coaches, staff, umpires, really anybody associated with Little League. So that's a way to, learn about the official rules that we play under. But there's three other kind of rules too. And the second one is local rules. And each league, say Walnut Creek or Martinez or East County, sets their own local rules. And local rules cover the areas in the Little League rule book in which options are given to a league. For example, are you going to follow the rule with 1 foot in the batter's box? It's actually a local option. There is another local option that if a league wants to use 80-foot bases instead of 90-foot bases in junior baseball, they can do that. So the one thing that leagues can't do, they can't establish rules that contradict the Little League rule book. In other words, they just can't make up rules. If they do want to have a special rule, they will have to get that approved by waiver from Little League headquarters. So those are local rules. Now we also have interleague rules, and that's what this meeting is going to cover a lot of. So interleague rules are games that are played under the official Little League rules, as indicated in the 2024 Little League Baseball rules and regulations. But where local options arise, District 4 has established what those options will be. So no local rules will apply. That is, it doesn't matter if you're playing at Martinez or at Walnut Creek or at East County or Pinole. If you are playing there and it is an interleague game, you must go by interleague rules. And there also can be no manager agreements. In other words, the manager is getting ahead of getting together and say, hey, let's not do continuous batting order. Let's bat 9 today. So you need to go by the interleague rules. The interleague rules, the blank pitching log, the intermediate and junior schedules, the intermediate and juniors contacts, all of that can be found at this website here, which is at the Little League District 4 Little League page. So go to the home page, and all you have to do, go to Google, type in California District 4 Little League, and this will come up. And I would highly recommend that you bookmark this. So on the side, you can see teenage baseball. Just click on that, and it will take you up to this page. There's Grayson's beautiful portrait there at the top. And periodically, he may have announcements, and he will put those up there. All the contact information is right below that. And of course, the 2024 schedules are listed there. And then below that, those are the interleague rules. So you'll see, just click on that and it will take you to a page that will have all of the interleague rules that we're going to be going over tonight. And then the bottom part has the big league locations, big diamond locations. Okay, so we've talked about the official playing rules. We've talked about local rules and interleague rules. There's also ground rules, and ground rules cover rules of a particular field of play. So it might be where the dead ball area is. What do you do if a batted ball hits that overhanging limb of that tree that overhangs the field? Those kind of things. These must be decided on by the leagues prior to the games being played, and these will be reviewed at the plate meeting. And the other thing is they should be published on each league's website. Okay, so that's just an overview of rules. Let's get to the new rules for the 2024 season. This is going to be very easy because the only rule changes for 2024 affect softball. And in terms of the regular season, there is nothing that affects baseball. There's only one rule change that will affect baseball in the postseason. It has to do with the definition of an at-bat for mandatory play. We're not going to cover that today. That will be covered in the District 4 clinics for the postseason. If you're chosen to be a manager or a coach for that, we will be running a clinic for the postseason, and that's where we'll cover that particular rule. It's not even that big of a rule change. But I would like to highlight a couple changes in regulations, and these are regulations Roman numeral 1, 10 through 13. And Roman numeral 1.10 states that all Little League volunteers who are required to fill out a volunteer form, and that means all of you who umpire, who are coaches, who are managers, you must complete an abuse awareness training provided by USA Baseball. And it must be dated after October 1st, 2023. So if you took it last year for the postseason, for example, it's no longer valid. You have to take it. And not only that, you have to take it each and every year beginning this year. So how do you get to this training, which will take at most about a half hour of your time? So again, go to the District 4 website, click on Little League Forms on the side. Then you'll see Abuse Awareness Training. Click on that, and that will take you to USA Baseball. If you haven't done this prior, you will have to fill out a registration. It's just going to ask you for an email address and your password. And then once you do that and you sign in, uh, click on the education link on the top. Once you click on education, it'll take you to this page. Click on courses. It'll take you to a whole list of courses, but the one you want is abuse awareness for adults base certification. Click on that and you'll be able to take the course. And what it is, it's about abuse, not just sexual abuse, but actually most of the training is on bullying and verbal abuse of players. I also want to highlight one more thing, and this is a new regulation, Regulation 1.13, and this prohibits one-on-one contact. And it says that every league needs to adopt a policy prior to the start of the season. I don't know if any of your leagues have contacted you about this, but each league should have done this already. And what it should do is have a policy on one-to-one contact. And what this policy is all about is it's prohibiting any of us who are volunteers with being alone with a minor athlete during the league's programs, unless, and there are exceptions, there's an emergency, or you have the written permission of the player's parent or legal guardian, or you yourself are the parent or legal guardian of the child. So one of the important things is it says that a volunteer's interactions with players must be observable and interruptible by another adult. In other words, you can't take a player and go off to a private area with that player to speak with them, anything. So you must be able to be observed by others, and you must be able to be interrupted by another adult. You can't contact players via social media. Um, and you're discouraged from interacting one-on-one with unrelated minor athletes in settings outside of the local league program. Um, One of the things is that, well, what do you do? And I've been a coach and a manager, so I know you run that practice, you have the game, everybody's left the field, and there's that one kid who still needs to be picked up. You don't abandon that kid. You stay with them until somebody comes along. Okay, so that's, changes for rules and regulations, not much, but actually with the regulation on one-on-one contact, that is very, very important. And also with the abuse awareness training, Little League is taking this stuff very, very seriously. Okay, let's go through safety and equipment. And again, all I'm going to be talking to you about is stuff that's related to intermediate and junior baseball. Some of these that I'll go through are for all levels, but we're specializing on or focusing on intermediate and juniors here. So the first is no handling of bats in the dugout. So if you look at the player at the top of the steps in that dugout, and this is the reason we have no handling of bats in the dugout. Think of it this way. These major league dugouts are much, much larger than anything we'll ever have in our games. Our dugouts tend to be very small. Also, that was an adult. Adults have a lot more spatial recognition and there's of their surroundings than do kids. So we don't want anybody with handling a bat in the dugout. We don't want some kid to lose all their front teeth or get a concussion from getting hit with a bat. There is no jewelry allowed. So there's no necklaces, there's no earrings, nose piercings. You can't even wear a rubber bracelet around your wrist. If a player comes to a game with earrings or nose piercing, they will be asked to, they will be told that either they remove it and they play the game, or they keep it in and they do not play the game. You cannot tape over any kind of earring or nose ring. The only kind of bracelet or necklace that's allowed is a medical alert bracelet or necklace. And if any of your players have any kind of special health conditions, please tell the umpire out there so we can also keep an eye out for that player during the game. Helmets, what do we look for as umpires before each game? You need to put your equipment outside the fence, and the umpires need to check that equipment. They need to check the helmets, the catcher's helmets, and the bats. So with helmets, we're looking for any kind of cracks. We're looking for any missing padding. If it has any kind of cage, we're looking to make sure all the screws are in and tight. We make sure it has the Noxay insignia. Um, well, there you go. Also, we're looking for pine tar, even dried. So if we find any of this, if we find excessive stickers, a repainted helmet, a chrome helmet, we are going to toss that helmet. Please don't argue with us as umpires if we do that. We also look at the C flaps. So make sure with your players that all their batting helmets have a C flap that is the same manufacturer and that they didn't have to drill any new holes in the helmet. So you can see that one that has an X by it, that's a generic C flap. It can't go with that helmet. If you have a Rawlings helmet, you need a Rawlings C flap. If you have a Boombah helmet, you need a Boombah C flap. And here are other things we're looking for: excessive stickers, the chrome helmets, also repainted helmets. And you can see that one down below with the excessive pine tar, even if it's dried. For catcher's helmets, we are looking for the NOCSA certification. We're looking to make sure there's no missing or loose screws, that all the padding is in place, and it must have the dangling throat guard. Even if it's a hockey style mask, it must have that. No skull caps are allowed in Little League. So when do catchers have to wear their equipment and how much equipment? Well, a catcher during infield, outfield practice near a bat must wear the catcher's helmet with the dangling throat guard. A catcher warming up a pitcher pregame or during the game, once that catcher gets into a squat position, must wear a catcher's helmet with a dangling throat guard. And then during the game, catcher's helmet with dangling throat guard, protective cup for male catchers, a catcher's mitt, and a chest protector with shin guards. Now let's talk about bats. We'll start off with defective bats in all divisions of baseball. And what we're looking for is damaged, cracked, bent, dented bats, bats that have sharp edges. A defective bat is not an illegal bat, it's just a dangerous bat. And what we try to do is remove all defective bats from the game. So, one of the things that you can do as coaches and managers at one of your practices, have your players lay out their bats, lay out their helmets, and you check them for everything we've been talking about. And if you find a cracked bat, if you find a dented bat, if you find a batter's helmet that has missing padding, tell the player that they need to replace that, that it will not be used in a game. What we do is we care about the kids' safety, and all of this is about the kids' safety. So what we're also worried about is other folks on the field. So what I want you to do with this video is watch the umpire around his head and shoulder area. So that umpire is very lucky that that didn't hit him in the head, and especially that the sharp part of that bat didn't hit him in the head. We may not be able to find everything on inspection, but there are many things we can find. What we're trying to do is cut down on things like this happening during a game. Now, those are defective bats. We simply remove a defective bat. There's also a criteria for an illegal bat. And an illegal bat is a bat that's been altered, say the cap has been popped off, it's been shaved down on the interior. It doesn't meet length or diameter requirements. It doesn't have the proper USA Bat or BB Core standard logo, or the USA Bat or BB Core logo is unreadable. Know that all bats that carry a BPF mark are illegal in Little League. They should never show up at a Little League game. And also bats with pine tar. Even if the pine tar is dried and not sticky, it makes it an illegal bat. So what are the bat specifications for intermediate and juniors? They're both the same. If it's a non-wood bat, it must have a readable USA Bat or BB Core logo on it. If it's a wood bat, that's all right. Perfectly fine to use wood bats, doesn't need any kind of logo on it. BPF logo bats, again, illegal. The barrel can't be any larger than 2 5/8 inches, and the bat can be no longer than 34 inches long. So what are we looking for? We're looking for that all bats have either that USA logo at the top, it comes in different silk screens, or that it has BB Core listed. But what we don't ever want to see are the BPF bats. So what happens if a batter does come up with an illegal bat? Say they didn't bring it out in inspection, and then they come to the batter's box with it. Once they step 1 foot in the batter's box, if the penalty is discovered before the next batter enters the box, the batter will be out. If a play occurs at that at bat, the defensive manager can choose either the out or the play. But no matter what that defensive manager chooses, for the first violation, the team will lose an adult base coach position. You don't lose a coach, but it means that one of the base coach positions will now be a kid with a helmet, not an adult. Second violation, manager is ejected. Any subsequent violation, the new manager is ejected. But always, the most important part of this, remove the illegal bat from the game. If you have non-wood bats, they must have a grip or some kind of cork, tape, or a composition material. You can have no slippery tape like electrical tape, can't take the place of that grip. And there are no traditional batting donuts allowed in Little League. You can only use a batting sleeve. And don't put all those donuts on your bat because that's just a horrible waste of donuts. Okay, we have a couple more things from regulations to go through here. So let's talk about mandatory play. Each rostered player who shows up at the game on time must have a minimum of one at bat and a minimum of playing in the field for 6 defensive outs. There are no exceptions to this. Even if the game is shortened because of a run rule, because of darkness, because of a time limit game. What is the penalty if a player doesn't get all of their mandatory play in? That player must start the next game. They then must meet all the mandatory play from the past game, and then they must stay in the game and meet the mandatory play for that game. So say a player in a game only has one at bat and 3 defensive outs. Well, the next game, they're going to start, they're going to get their 3 defensive outs, and they're also going to get 6 more defensive outs and an at bat. And only at that point can they be removed from the game defensively. In terms of our interleague rules, if a team uses 15 to 20 players, because it's so large, and if 15 eligible players show up to the game, mandatory play is reduced to 1 at bat and 3 defensive outs. What does it mean to bat 1 time? Well, for the purposes of meeting mandatory play, it means that the batter steps into the batter's box with no count, and one of the following occurs. They're retired as a batter, say they strike out. They're retired as a batter runner, say they get thrown out at first. Or they're retired as a runner. They get to first base, but then they're forced out at second base. Or they reach base and score, or after reaching base, the inning or game ends. So what this means is the first time a player is at bat and that player gets onto base, they cannot be removed for, say, a courtesy runner. A little bit of decorum and rules about managers and coaches, players and umpires. So prior to the game, when you folks show up to your game site, only managers, coaches, players, and umpires are allowed on the field. There cannot be any parents. There cannot be friends of players. There cannot be your young sons and daughters there on the field. There can only be 3 adults per team that are allowed prior to the game. So you can't have a 4th coach who's helping warm up the team. There can only be 3 adults. And they must be in the dugout, bullpen area on the field. So you can't have any more than that. During the game, you can only the coaches, managers, and players are allowed in the dugout. No friend of a player, nobody else. and an adult or coach must be in the dugout at all times there's a player in that dugout. So that if during the game you have two coaches out on the bases and you have a coach in the dugout and that coach has to go to the bathroom, they leave that dugout. The umpire is instructed to stop the game and not to proceed until you have an adult in that dugout. The on-deck batter position shall be positioned closest to the dugout that your own home team is. So you can't cross over, lefty, righty, anything like that. You have to stay on your side of the field. Okay, Don, do we have any questions for this first part?
Well, Jim, we have a couple of questions that I want to make sure you're going to cover in the future. So we won't have to address them now. But one is, are you going to cover the continuous batting order regulation?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So we'll hold those questions until you talk about that. The other one deals with pitch logs and the requirement for that. Are you going to talk through that in the pitching regulations?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so we'll hold those questions, and folks, if that's acceptable, if not, let me know and we'll try to address your questions earlier. That's what we've got, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Don. Okay, so let's go on to interleague rules, and I think this is where we will be covering most of that stuff. So we've decided on the interleague that we're going to go with the option that you can begin, continue, and end a game with only 8 players. The 9th spot in the batting order is simply skipped over. It's not considered an out. And I know a lot of managers and coaches try to get that, but it's not the case. And here's that continuous batting order. Continuous batting order is going to be used by all teams, and know that in the postseason, in TOC and All Stars, we will again be using the continuous batting order. Don and I were just at a meeting, Little League Roundtable down in Anaheim, California, and Little League made it very, very clear that they have absolutely no intention of changing the continuous batting order for tournament play for the All-Stars. So interleague, we're going to be using continuous batting order. And in a continuous batting order, all players are considered starters. And you just figure out where they're going to be in the batting lineup, and that's how you'll bat throughout the game. A player may be entered or re-entered defensively in the game anytime. So you can have a player play defense, next inning they sit, next inning they play defense, next inning they sit. All you have to make sure is that that player meets mandatory play during that game. What if a player leaves the game? Well, his or her place in the batting order simply is skipped over. Again, it's not an out, and that player has a right to return to the game. And if they do, they simply go back into the same spot in the batting order. If a player becomes a runner and is unable to continue running, the player who made the last out will replace him or her. And a pitcher removed from the mound may return to pitch once in the game, but only if that player remained in the game defensively. So that's one of the things you'll want to consider if you have a pitcher and you remove them from the mound and they are still eligible to pitch in that game. Make sure that they stay in the game defensively. Once they sit in that dugout, that means they can no longer return to the game and pitch. They can return to the game, but they will not be able to pitch any longer. A regulation game for intermediates and juniors consists of 7 innings. If a game is called for any reason, weather or darkness, and that's for sure going to probably be happening early in the season, it is a regulation game if 5 innings are completed, 4.5 innings if the home team is leading. And all run rule games, say you 15-run rule or time limit games, are considered regulation no matter how many innings are played. If you have a horrible, horrible time limit game that only goes 2 innings, and it ends in the time limit, it is considered a regulation game. So in District 4 for interleague games, we do have time limits. There's a 2 hour and 15 limit time limit on all games. And again, you cannot have a local rule that has a different time limit. So what does the 2 hour, 15-minute time limit means? It means that any inning begun prior to 2 hours, 15 minutes, even if it's 2 hours, 14 minutes, and you start a new inning, that inning must be completed. If the time limit is reached and the home team is leading, they do not need to bat. No new inning may begin after 2 hours and 15 minutes. So you finish whatever you've started, but you don't start anything new after 2 hours and 15 minutes. And a time limit game that ends in a tie will not be continued at a later date. It will just be recorded as a tie. We also use the run rule. And for interleague, we're using both the 15, 10, and 8-run rule. So if a team is leading by 15 runs after 4 innings, 3.5 if the home team is leading, or 10 runs after 5, or 8 runs after 6, the opposing managers shall concede defeat. There are no exceptions to this, and the game will not continue. If the game is shortened because of a run rule, and if the managers want to continue on with a scrimmage, that's their business, but the umpires are instructed to leave the game site. It's a liability issue for umpires. In interleague, every effort should be made by both leagues involved to reschedule games canceled by weather. So just because a game is canceled by weather, and that's going to happen here, at the beginning of the season, both the leagues try to figure out a time and a date where you can make up that game. Protests. Protests should be settled on the field of play before there is a protest. But if you have a protest, you can send an appeal to the assistant district administrator. That's Grayson. He's in charge of this. And those are only limited to rules interpretations by the umpires or by the use of an ineligible player or pitcher. If you're protesting a rule interpretation, it must be done before the next pitch, play, or attempted play after that supposed violation. And if you want to protest an ineligible player or pitcher, that must be done before the umpires leave the field of play at the end of the game. Protests are discouraged since all games are at a recreational level and there's no district standings that are kept. But if you do file a protest, you must tell the umpire, I'm playing this game under protest. And what you then must do is file that protest after the game. It must be emailed within 24 hours to Grayson, and Grayson will make a decision on that, and his decision will be final. We will be enforcing the 1 foot in the batter's box rule. And what this rule simply states is that when a batter first enters the batter's box, they must keep 1 foot in that batter's box throughout the at bat, unless, and there are all kinds of exceptions here. They swing at a pitch, the catcher doesn't catch the ball, time has been called, a play has been attempted, say a throw down to second to catch a runner stealing, a lot of different exceptions. And they're kind of hard to go through and figure out, wait, did that happen? Did that happen? Did that happen? So I want to teach you a very easy way to know when a player needs to stay in the batter's box. So if the pitch is a called strike or a ball, that means if they strike at it, they can step out of the batter's box. So if the pitch is a called strike or ball and it doesn't force the batter out of the box, it isn't too far inside, and the catcher catches the ball, catches it in flight, not fields it after it bounces, and the pitcher stays around the mound area and no further play is made, then the batter must stay in the batter's box. And as an umpire, that's the way I remember the rule. I called a strike or I called a ball. Did the catcher catch the ball? Yes. Is the pitcher staying around the mound? Yes. Has there been another play? No. Therefore, batter has to stay in the box. Well, what's the penalty if they don't stay in the box? Well, the first time during an at bat, the umpire is going to warn the batter. And umpires are instructed to be loud, to point to the batter, and to say, batter is warned to keep 1 foot in the box. Generally, what we try to do is we aim our voice loudly at the third base coach, who's usually the manager, not always, but many times, so that the team itself begins to police it with their own players. If the player does it a second time during an at bat, the umpire should call a strike on the batter. And if they do it a third time, then they get another strike called on them. The ball is live and no pitch needs to be made. So if a strike is called for player stepping out, we do not add a pitch to the pitch count. Reason for this, we're not going to penalize the defense for something that the offense is doing. Interleague, we do allow the courtesy runner. It is only for the pitcher or catcher of record when there are 2 outs. And I want to emphasize that term of record. It's not who you will be bringing in as pitcher and catcher the next inning. It's whoever was on the mound or catching when the last out was made of the last half inning. Those are the only 2 players who can be courtesy run for. Who is the courtesy runner? It must be the player who made the last out when we use a continuous batting order. And due to using a continuous batting order, we will not be using any special pinch runners. They are not allowed in games. We will be enforcing the rule associated with stealing of signs. So if a player, coach, or manager is stealing signs, if they're trying to alert a batter of pitch selection or location, it is considered unsportsmanlike conduct in Little League. And the first time it happens, there will be a warning. The second time it happens, there will be an ejection. Don, do we have questions?
Jim, we have just a couple.
Okay.
So the first is, are these rules apply only to interleague play? Or can my league make other decisions related to some of these optional rules?
Good question. If you have a team that's playing interleague, it must be by these interleague rules. However, if you have 2 teams within your league who are playing each other, then it's whatever your local rules are. My advice to leagues is just use the interleague rules unless there's a reason for time limits. For example, you need to have less time between games or less time for a game. But it's just easier if you use the interleague rules. Why? Because you don't have to be thinking about well, wait a second, we're playing our home, our, fellow team here from Walnut Creek. So which rule set are we using? The other thing is when we get to TOC, these interleague rules will be the rules we'll be playing with.
All right, we have a similar question. Last season, we were playing a league from a different district. We went to their site to play, and they brought out their rule set and started telling us how the game was going to be played. What do we do about that?
Okay, Grayson, are you on here?
Yeah.
What has been your policy of this? I know that if a team comes to our fields, they must play by our interleague rules. What do you instruct teams who may go to another district?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, because we did set up interleague with District 53, um, and American Canyon, and there might be other leagues within D353. Are going to exchange our interleague rules with them. So we will send our rules to District 53. They will send them to ours when they have them. I will distribute that out, and we will play by the home district rules by that. So when you arrive, if you're going there, when you arrive, make sure you have a conversation and go over those rules. I will send those out to everybody once I receive them. So when you go there, you kind of have an expectation of what those rules are going to be. Yeah, last year we did have there was some confusion on that, so we're trying to make it a little more clear for this year.
Okay, and you'll obviously send out a message to everybody.
I will. I have not received those from D53 yet.
Okay, thank you. I don't know who Drew is, but can you not draw on the screen? And is it possible for you to erase what you have drawn? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Don, was that the last question?
So we have a couple more anticipatory
Sure.
questions. The group is waiting for you to talk about pitching restrictions and pitching rules. So we're going to get to that, right?
It's the next section.
Great.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. And again, whoever drew on the screen, can you please, if you have the power to erase that, it would be much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, pitching. Okay, so interleague, except for the pitching logs that we're going to discuss below, interleague games will strictly follow Regulation 6 and Rule 8 in the Little League Baseball rule book. In other words, if you want to know all the stuff that we're going through, it's only in two parts of the book. It's in Regulation 6 and it's in Rule 8, and there you'll find everything about pitching. So, except that where we diverge is the pitching logs. And so each manager must have a pitching log for each game. And that pitching log shows who has pitched in the previous games, the date, the number of pitches, and the threshold. And I'll go over what a threshold is here in a minute. The form is available at the District 4 website under baseball. So this is what it looks like. You need to carry it to each and every one of your games, and you can see date of game, pitches thrown, threshold observed, the pitcher's name, uniform number, league age, and both managers should initial this. And also the scorekeeper, who's the one, should also write this down, and there should be a signature. And then they should put the number of days of rest that are required. So what happens if you forgot your pitching log at home? Don't do that. So if the manager of a team cannot produce a current pitching log before the start of the game, each of that team's pitchers may only pitch 20 pitches. And no threshold, meaning 20 means 20. So if you don't have a pitching log, your first pitcher is going to pitch 20 pitches. Then you're going to substitute in another pitcher. They're going to pitch 20 pitches. Then you're going to have another pitcher pitch 20 pitches. So this is to make sure that we protect the players' arms, that we know how many innings those players are, how many pitches those pitchers have thrown. If you can't show that proof, then we're limiting it. Okay, if a manager of a team cannot produce the current pitching log before the start of the game, we go by that 20 pitches each, but also the opposing manager may file a proper protest under Rule 419 if he or she believes an illegal pitcher was used in the game. In other words, that manager has information that a day ago, little Johnny pitched 80 pitches and is ineligible to pitch that day. But you see Johnny pitching, you can protest that. And again, goes to Grayson, who will review and will make a final decision. Under all circumstances, though, the game will be played pending review of the protest. We want the kids to be able to play the game. Okay, so what is threshold? Threshold, we find it in a number of different areas with days of rest, with the number of pitches that a pitcher can pitch in a day. It's basically saying when they hit a certain number, they're allowed to continue pitching to a batter they've already started to pitch to. And they can continue to pitch to that batter until that batter reaches base. That batter is put out. The third out is made to complete the half inning or the game, or the pitcher is removed from the mound prior to completing pitching to that batter. So it's saying that if you're only allowed to pitch 85 pitches, you started a batter at 84 pitches, it means you can continue to pitch to that batter, maybe even upwards to 90, 95 pitches until batter reaches base, batter's out, third out is made, or the manager just decides to remove the pitcher. So that is threshold. Okay, what are the pitching limits based on age? For intermediate and juniors, aged 11 and 12, only pitch 85 pitches. For players 13 to 16, and that is the way the rule is written, it's 95. However, know that there are no 15 and 16-year-old pitchers in intermediate or juniors, especially it's not in juniors. This is threshold exemption allowed. You hit 85 pitching to a batter, you can continue. Days of rest, pitchers aged 14 and under, and that is all of our pitchers in juniors and intermediate. Those are the calendar days of rest. So if you pitch 20 or fewer pitches, you don't need a day of rest. If you pitch 21 to 35, you'll need one calendar day of rest. So what that means is your player pitched 30 pitches. They pitched it on Monday. They cannot pitch on Tuesday. They can then pitch on Wednesday. Threshold exemption is allowed. And again, no 15-year-old players are allowed to pitch in juniors. A player can catch 4 or more innings. Many of them do that, but know that if a player catches 4 or more innings, they cannot pitch on that calendar day. And catching a single pitch constitutes catching for an inning. Also, if a pitcher pitches 41 or more pitches in a game, they cannot catch for the remainder of that day. And again, threshold exemption is allowed here for that 41. So what we're trying to do is protect the kid's arms. We don't want a kid to, pitch 85 pitches and then come in and play catcher and be throwing more. A player who has played the position of catcher for 3 innings or less is eligible to pitch. But if they do become a pitcher and they do deliver 21 pitches or more, then they will not be allowed to go back to the catcher position that calendar day. And again, threshold exemption is allowed. Intermediates and juniors, no pitcher may pitch 3 consecutive days. Hopefully, you're not playing 3 games in a row on 3 consecutive days. It's possible it happens in the postseason, but know that it's not allowed at any level of Little League Baseball. And again, I want to reiterate this point. I brought it up earlier. A pitcher who has been removed from the mound and is still eligible to pitch, but remaining in the game defensively, they can return to pitch anytime in the remainder of that game, but only once per game. So again, if you have a pitcher and you pull that pitcher before they've hit their 85 limit, and you're thinking maybe I might need this pitcher to come back in and pitch, leave them in the game defensively. Once they sit in the dugout, they cannot pitch again. In intermediates, a player may not pitch in more than 1 game in a day. So you can have double headers, but know that if a player pitches 1 game, they cannot pitch the next game. Juniors, however, you can pitch in up to 2 games in a day. If you're league age 13 or above. So if you have a 12-year-old pitcher, sorry, they can only pitch in 1 game. But if they're 13 or over, 13 or 14, and they deliver 31 or more pitches in the first game, they cannot pitch in the second game. And again, threshold exemption allowed. And if a pitcher pitches in 2 games in a day, the combined maximum number of pitches is 95. So if you're planning to have a doubleheader, think all of this through ahead of time, how you're going to use your pitching. Visits to the pitcher, you should be familiar with this. It's once per inning or twice per game. In other words, that if you visit a pitcher twice in an inning, that second visit, you will have to pull the pitcher. If you visited your pitcher twice in a game, if you visit them again, you will have to pull that pitcher. And any visit to any defensive player is counted as a visit to the pitcher. So if you call time and you simply go out and you only speak to your first baseman, that will be recorded as a visit to your pitcher. If you call your catcher over to the dugout and you talk to your catcher, that will be recorded as a visit to the pitcher. An injury conference is not a visit. We welcome you to check on the well-being of your players. What you need to do is make it very clear when you come out of that dugout that you tell an umpire that you're checking on an injury of your player. That umpire will then go with you to make sure that is what you discuss with that player. If at any point you begin to discuss strategy, then that will be counted as a visit. And any conversation with a defensive player prior to announcing a pitching change is considered a visit to the pitcher. So if you want to pull your pitcher and you're thinking you may want to use them again, but they already have 2 visits, and you first go out to your first baseman, talk to them, then you go to your umpire and announce your pitching change, that's now a visit to your pitcher, and your pitcher has had now 3 visits. So what I advise you to do, if you're going to change pitchers and you don't want to use up your pitching visits, just go straight to the umpire before you talk to anybody else. Tell the umpire of your pitching change. This is something we see off and on throughout the season, and the rule is very clear about this, and it's about bringing the hands to the mouth. The pitcher shall not ever bring their hand to the contact with their mouth or lips while they're touching the pitcher's plate. And the penalty is a ball on the batter, and the pitcher is warned that if they continue to violate, they can be removed from the game. And I want to emphasize this. This is not removed from the mound. It is removed from the game. So make sure you get your pitchers so that they don't ever go to their mouth while they're on the pitching rubber. Can they go to their mouth? Yes, off the pitching rubber. But if they do it within what is considered that 18-foot surrounding the circle surrounding the pitcher's plate, they must distinctively wipe off their hand before coming in contact with the ball. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about illegal pitches. We're going to talk about balks, and I have a whole series of videos to go through this to sort of show you what are some of the most common balks that we see out on the field. So there are two illegal pitches that are considered balks that are different from any other uh, illegal pitches, and they carry a different penalty. And that is if a pitcher pitches to the batter without their pivot foot in contact with the pitcher's plate. That is one kind of illegal pitch. The other kind of illegal pitch is what we call a quick return pitch, when the batter is not reasonably set in the batter's box. Now, there is a myth in baseball that once that batter steps in the box, the pitcher has a right to pitch. They do not have a right to pitch. The rule states clearly the batter has a right to be reasonably set before the pitcher begins their pitch. What this means is a pitcher should never be in a set position before that batter is ready to receive the pitch. So, what's the penalty for this? Well, it's a balk with runners on base. It's a delayed dead ball, and all base runners will advance one base, unless the runner reaches first base and all runners advance safely on a play, and then we ignore the balk. A pitch will be credited to the pitch count only if the ball is pitched. Without a runner on base, and this is what makes these two pitches different than all other illegal pitches, is that it's a ball on the batter with no runners on base. We'll see with other balks, if there's no runners on base, it's not a balk and there's no ball on the batter. So let's watch a couple videos here. This is pitching while not in contact with the pitcher's plate. I don't know why he did it. He even injured himself doing it. But you cannot step off the plate like that and pitch. Sometimes with inexperienced pitchers, we will see them start with their pivot foot not on the rubber, not touching the rubber, or stepping forward with their pivot foot. That's the same thing. It's an illegal pitch. It is a balk. This is something that, for those of you who are umpires out there, please always look out for. This is for the safety of the batter. Do not allow a pitcher to quick pitch a batter. So here we have a batter who is not even in the batter's box. The pitcher has come set and begins to pitch before that batter is ready to take that pitch. That should not have been allowed by the umpire. Here is an umpire getting control of the situation. If you see with that one, the batter is just stepping in, is not reasonably set, and yet the pitcher came set, what the umpire does is immediately stops that. And that's what should happen. You don't want a player who's not set looking up and there's a ball right at their face. Okay, now we're going to talk about a bunch of other illegal pitches. And these are things like not completing the pitch, not coming set, moving a shoulder in the set position, dropping the ball, a double set, not stepping and throwing to a base. The penalties for these, if there is a runner on base, it's a balk. It's a delayed dead ball, and all base runners will advance. One base, unless, again, a play happens and the runner reaches first and all runners advance safely, but that is all runners must advance safely. And a pitch is credited to the pitch count only if the ball is pitched. Without runners on base, it's nothing. Okay, let's go through some sort of classic box here. This is no discernible stop. There is not a time limit for the pitcher coming set, but they must make a discernible stop. And you can see that was not a discernible stop. They're basically blowing through their set position. So this is probably one of the most common balks that we see, especially with more inexperienced pitchers. So did not come to a discernible stop. They even do it in the major leagues. Okay, another kind of balk is what we call a double set. So the last one was not coming set. This is coming set, but coming set twice. What did I do? It's together, set, and then he came set again. So that's a double set balk. When you begin your pitching motion, you must deliver the pitch. So this is not delivering the pitch. It will always be a balk. It can happen for a variety of reasons: stumbling, tripping, getting your cleat caught. It can also happen because you're distracted. And we see this sometimes. The coach yells at the pitcher in the middle of their motion and the pitcher stops pitching. All of those are balks. So once you begin that pitching motion, you must pitch. Once you bring your hands together in a set position and you separate your hands, you have to pitch or throw to a base. But what you can't do is bring your hands together, separate, bring your hands together. So you can see he separated his hands, but he did not pitch. That will be a balk. One thing we see, and please teach your pitchers not to do this, which is when they step on the rubber and if the ball is in their glove, many times they will reach in with their hand and pull the ball out when they're on the rubber. Technically, they have brought their hands together, and by pulling their hand out, they have begun the pitching motion. So if they step on with a ball in the glove and they put their hand in, their hand better stay there, or step on with the ball in your hand. A drop ball is considered a balk. And even if the player catches the ball as it drops, that's still a balk. Not stepping off properly. Once a player comes set, the only way they can step off properly is to step off the back of the pitching rubber first with their pivot foot. They cannot step off in front of the rubber. They cannot step off to the side of the rubber. They must step straight back, and it must first be with their pivot foot. So sometimes we will see players who get in their wind-up position, realize they have a runner on base, and they want to switch to a set position. And so what they do is they need to step off first before they change to the set position. So since this is a right-handed pitcher, their pivot foot is their right foot. But if you'll notice, they step back with their left foot first. So that is a balk. Should have stepped back with the right foot. Here is a pitcher who steps off in front of the pitcher's plate. This guy just walks off the front of the mound. Another common balk we see with younger pitchers is that once they come set, you can only move your head. And as they look over to first base, many times they move their shoulder also. You cannot move the rest of your body. You can see that whole shoulder turned to first base. So it's a little harder to see. But you can see him moving his entire upper body instead of just his head. Again, moving the upper part of his body. This is a pitcher who uses, sometimes it's referred to as a knee pop, as a way to deceive the runner who's going to be stealing on first motion. And we'll see this. So he cannot make this move unless it's a fluid movement to first. So he's making that move first to get the runner to begin a steal, but then throwing behind. It's kind of exaggerated, but you can't move that leg first. And then in a separate motion, throw to a base or pitch. Watch his front leg. Again, the runner was running on first motion, but got caught out because of that. That is a balk. You cannot feint a throw to first base. You must follow through with the throw to first base. If there are runners at second or third, you can feint to second or third, but first base is different. You cannot do this. The reason he didn't throw is he realized there wasn't anybody at first base. And when the ball is thrown to first base, you throw it to the base. Um, didn't know exactly how to put this in the title, but the first baseman must be close enough to the base to be able to make a play on that runner at first base. So here you have a pitcher who is going to throw to the first baseman who is actually not covering first base. This is a balk. You see the first baseman wasn't anywhere near first base, near able to make a play. The rule also states that when you throw to a base, you must step directly to the base and you must step before you throw the ball. So this first one will be a pitcher who throws before he steps, and the other ones will be not stepping directly to the base. Here you can see the left-handed pitcher steps really towards home plate and not towards first base. This is a little hard to tell from the angle, but this is probably a balk. It looks like he comes more close to pitch to home than he does towards third. It's not in the rule set, but many umpires basically make a 45-degree angle. And the expectation is you step closer to one side of that 45-degree angle when you throw to a base. And there he didn't even step before he threw. It's also a balk, and this is a balk that's designed to deceive the runner. It's for left-handers, and it's throwing to first base if the front foot crosses completely behind the back of the pitcher's plate. That pitcher is committed to pitching the ball and cannot throw to first base. So again, a little bit of problem with the angle here, but you can see that back foot swinging past the back leg. That doesn't make it a balk. What would make it a balk is if that foot swings past the back of the pitcher's plate. And admittedly, with a two-umpire system, sometimes this can be a little difficult to detect. Again, as I mentioned before, sometimes pitchers will start in the windup and then they realize they have a runner on base and they have to switch to the set position. How do you get out of that mess? You simply step off the pitcher's plate with your pivot foot first, then you set up in the set position. What you cannot do is start in the windup and not step off and simply try to switch to the set position. So that's what this pitcher does. He's in the windup, realizes he has to go to the set, switches to the set. Why did the runner run? Because he knew that once that pitcher started his motion, he had to go home. That was called a balk. Okay, that's it for balks. We have a little bit more here to talk about with the umpire and a few points of emphasis. So the home team in all of our interleague games are to provide two umpires for each game. We realize that there are times when there may be one umpire, but ideally we want to try to get two umpires to each and every intermediate and junior game. If a youth umpire is used, the interleague rules state that the other umpire must be at least 18 years old. In other words, an adult. Again, we realize that there are times when it may be that there are two youth on a game if that game is going to be played. But this is a hard and fast rule, and it can never be violated. And that is if only youth umpires are used in a game, it is mandatory that the game, not the game site, not the complex, but the game has an adult game coordinator appointed by the league for that game. And if there's no game coordinator, the game should not be played. That game coordinator has special responsibilities, and it's essentially to look after that youth umpire. That game coordinator can't be filling other functions. In other words, they can't be a scorekeeper. They can't be in the snack shack. They also cannot be the adult game coordinator for two games at the same time. So here are some interleague points of emphasis that we would like to see at each and every game. So we begin the game by exchanging lineup cards, and we want you to keep those lineup cards together. There should be an original and there should be 3 copies. Keep those together. Don't let your scorekeeper rip off one and keep one. The scorekeeper will eventually, home scorekeeper will eventually get a copy. So don't worry about that. The lineup card should be completely filled out. The team, the date, whether you're home or away, and the manager's full name. So don't just write your last name, write your first and last name. I want that as an umpire because from the get-go, I want to start addressing you by your first name. I don't want to say, hey, coach, or, hey, Johnson. I want to say, hey, Bob. I want to be on a first name basis with you. Each player should have a minimum of a first initial and a full last name. Usually we get lineup cards that have only a first name or a first name and a last initial. We need the last name, ideally first name and last name, but if you just want to have a first initial, last name, fine. Jersey number for everybody. Double check your jerseys. Make sure you got the right numbers. For those starting defensive players, we want their position designated by a number, catcher 2, pitcher 1, first base 3. If you have a player who's going to show up late, do not include that player on the lineup. As an umpire, if we have a player who's not there, we will scratch them from the lineup. If you have somebody who will be coming late, just tell the umpire at the plate meeting. And when that player arrives at the game site, you have a right to either play that player or not play that player. And I hope you would play that player. But then when that player shows up and you want to play that player, just tell the umpire and the umpire will insert them into the lineup. What do you do if you want to challenge a call? You think an umpire made an incorrect call. You think he made an incorrect ruling. Well, remember that judgment calls, things like safe, out, fair, foul, ball, strike, those cannot be questioned. But say you believe that there was an infield fly and it wasn't called. How do you go about challenging that? Well, what you do, it can only be the manager. So if a coach approaches an umpire, what we as umpires will do is simply say, if your coach has or if your manager has a question, he or she can come out and talk to me. So have the manager call time, ask to approach, go to the umpire who made the call. Don't start yelling across the field. Wait till you're to the umpire. We as umpires are instructed that if you're coming out to us, we will meet you halfway. Go to the umpire who made the call. And then when you get to that umpire in a conversational tone, don't yell because chances are we're just going to send you back to the dugout. In a conversational tone, ask a question. Hey, didn't the first baseman pull his foot? Hey, we had one out and a runner at first and second. Wasn't that an infield fly? Shouldn't the batter have been called out? Or from where I was, I thought my fielder tagged that runner. What did you see? And then a discussion will ensue. You can ask the umpire, can you get help on that? It is completely up to the umpire who made the call to decide whether to go to their partner for help or not. If they believe they 100% got that call right, it was a judgment call, they may say, no, coach, that's my call. I have it 100% sure of my call. Then it's over. But if the umpire decides to go ask for help from their partner, you as a manager need to go back to the dugout. The two umpires will converse. The one umpire will give the other umpire any information he or she asks. And at the end, the umpire who made the call will decide, and only that umpire can decide whether they will keep the call or reverse the call. Once that final call has been made, the umpire will make a final call. You must accept the decision unless you believe it's a misinterpretation of a playing rule. And then you have the right to protest. Okay, this is about safety. And Don and I talked about this, and we sort of went through what are some of the most common safety violations and concerns that we see sort of week in, week out, that we wish we never had to deal with. And we wish we didn't have to deal with them because we believe that the adults are responsible for the safety of the kids, and the managers and coaches of a team are especially responsible for the safety of their players. So, what do we commonly see sort of week after week? We see illegal or damaged equipment. We see bats that we keep throwing out every single week because it has the same dent in it. We see illegal bats that shouldn't be at the game site. We see helmets that don't have proper padding, that have part of the padding missing. Those helmets were made with padding for a certain reason, and that's to protect the brain of that youth, or that it's missing screws or the screws are loose. We also see over and over the helmet C flaps don't match the manufacturer of the C flap, don't match the manufacturer of the helmet. We see catchers' helmets with no dangling throat guards. A player plays on a travel team. They don't require a dangling throat guard, so they take it off. And then they come to this game and they don't have it. So listen, like I said before, at some point, have a practice where you, as a manager, or your coaches, go through your players' equipment, make sure that it meets all the requirements of Little League and that it's safe. We see catchers warming up pitchers or taking infield, outfield practice near a bat without a catcher's helmet. We see players without bats, with bats, not wearing a batting helmet. And the pregame, when those players go out, even if they're hitting wiffle balls, they're with a bat. They have to have a batting helmet. Think of it this way: batting helmet naturally goes with a bat. We see, even at this level, male catchers without a protective athletic cup. Why? I have no idea, but we do. We also see fields without breakaway bases. And I know that Grayson has made a point of this, of emphasizing this, and we emphasize this. It is a Little League rule that breakaway bases must be used. We instruct our umpires that if they show up at a field and the bases aren't breakaways, get them to change them. If they can't be changed, then simply walk away and do not umpire that game. It's a safety concern. We want to cut down on broken ankles, broken wrists. We see dugouts without at least one adult in them during the game when there's players in the dugout. We see players handling bats in the dugout, constantly saying, "Hey, coach, can you have your players put the bats down? Hey, coach, can you have your players put the bats down? Hey, coach, can you have your players put the bats down?" We see managers and coaches bullying, verbally abusing players. This absolutely has to stop. Little League has a zero tolerance for this. So if a player misses a grounder, it goes between their legs. Don't yell at that player. Give them something positive. Tell them how they can field the ball differently next time so that they can field that grounder. Give them encouragement. Listen, the last thing a kid wants when they make an error or do something dumb out there, the last thing they want, because they know all of their friends have seen it, they know their parents have seen it, they know there's a crowd who has seen it, the last thing they then want is to be yelled at by an adult, one of their coaches and managers. They're coming to these games to have a fun time. They want to enjoy the game of baseball with their classmates, with their friends. They're not there to be yelled at. Chances are maybe they get yelled at a lot at home. This is the one place that they can be safe and not be yelled at. So positive coaching. Another safety concern we have is pitchers pitching in both Little League and travel ball in the same season. There is no Little League rule that you have to sit a player because they pitched in on another team and another, a travel ball team. But you as a coach need to look out for those players. So what I would say is if you have players who are on travel teams, and you may even be the coach of that travel team, follow the Little League rules. If they pitched 2 days ago and they pitched 80 pitches, don't let them pitch 2 days later. Okay, Don, do we have questions? And also, do you have anything to add to that last part I went through?
Jim, we've got a whole number of questions, and then I'll be happy to offer a few comments. We're going to go back here. We're going to go backwards through pitching. And I'm trying to get to my questions. Did I lose you, Jim?
No, I'm here.
I've lost the screen. So let me ask a couple questions. First one has to do with, you covered the one about, they have the question about travel ball and Little League pitching at the same time. So we covered that one. The second one has to do, we didn't.
You there, Don?
I am. Did you hear my question, Jim?
Don?
Excuse
No,
me?
you froze up.
What?
You froze up.
Yeah, I'm having connection problems. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No. No?
Yes.
Okay, the question was, what's the proper version of the pitch log? The paper version only, or is a game changer version acceptable?
Grayson, you want to handle that? You're in charge of that.
We would definitely prefer a paper version of the pitch log. It's a lot easier to travel with, a lot easier to show. You have the proper signatures that are available on that. So that is the preferred version.
Okay, and the follow-up question to that is, how do we handle a situation where there is no pitch log? Do we protest the game?
If there's no pitch log, the team who cannot produce a pitching log, each of its players can only pitch 20 pitches. If for any reason you as a manager believes that a pitcher is pitching who is ineligible, then you have a right to protest that game. If any of you come across a team that seems to continually not have its pitching log, please alert Grayson to this.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see my screen, unfortunately, but I'm going from memory. Question about what happens if a balk occurs, but the umpires don't call it? Can a manager or a player call it out?
We don't want a manager or player to call out balk because then the defensive team might believe that that is coming from the umpire. If a coach or if a manager believes that a player is balking on the other team, simply call timeout and go out to the umpire and maybe make your concerns known.
Okay, good. Okay, I think those are the primary questions. The other ones we addressed. There was a question about, do all these rules apply to both intermediate and juniors? I think the answer is generally yes. The pitching rules, right, for a number of pitches per game. The number of pitches per day are restricted by the age of the player, not the division. So we've got to
Right.
remember that these are age-related pitch limits. But generally, all the other rules apply to both levels. All right. I think those are the questions, Jim.
Okay. Do you want to
Yeah,
add
real quick. First of all, I want to thank folks for stepping up to be. I think most everybody on the meeting is a manager or a coach. I really want to thank you for being involved in Little League at this important leadership level. This is my 30th season in District 4 as a volunteer, and it's my 15th season on the District 4 staff as the umpire-in-chief. I'll just offer a couple quick things about teenage baseball. I think each of you should ask yourself, how personally equipped are you to deal with teenagers? Do you understand how teenagers work and how their thought processes are and how they learn and how they react to situations? It's important that you, as the manager, your job is not to teach baseball skills. Your job is to manage the team and ensure that the players are having a good experience. That said, so what kind of tools can Little League offer you? So there's the Little League Diamond Leader Training Program, which I encourage you to complete. Some leagues are requiring every volunteer to complete the Diamond Leader training. If you don't know what the Diamond Leader training is, go to littleleague.org and put it in the search, and up will come the training. It's a very important training to complete. That said, well, the other problem with teenage baseball is it's an important time for teaching baseball skills to players, because they come from a time when baseball at the 12 and under on a 60-foot field, some of the rules are limiting and they don't really impact how players play the game, in terms of, yeah, we got to teach them the skills, but sometimes it's just making sure they're out there playing. When it gets to teenage baseball, this is where Little League starts to fall apart. This is why we lose players. I would really ask that you have a discussion with your league board of directors or your coaching coordinator or whoever recruited you to be a manager or a coach, and ask, hey, are we developing players for high school? Are we putting together teams of players that are going to learn to participate together, learn some baseball skills? Because I would suggest that many of us do not have the skills to teach, the ability to teach baseball skills to these players at 13, 14 years old. So find a way to get that training into your team. The last thing I'm going to say is, if you're a manager, do you know how your games are going to get umpired? Jim spent 2 hours talking about some pretty interesting rule sets that if you're expecting a 13 or 14-year-old young person to understand the balk rules and to effectively apply those in your game, I think your players are going to be frustrated. I have a theory as the district chief umpire that umpire skills should be consistent with the level of play in which we put those umpires in. So when we ask to have high skilled play, we should have umpires that understand both the players that are on the field as well as the rules that we're asking them to play by. If your league hires outside umpires under the belief that you're going to get better umpires, well, you're totally wrong. The most dedicated umpires in Contra Costa County are the umpires that are volunteers for Little League. They're not Little League volunteers. They volunteer their time to Little League to be umpires. They go through lots of training. They've gone through all this rule instruction, and they participate in mentoring and feedback. So the umpires you get from a paid umpire association will not know Little League rules. They will not be checking your equipment, and probably you're going to get one umpire on the field. So I think you should have a real focused discussion with your board over how are you going to umpire your games. And I think there's probably 100 games in each division. That's a lot of umpire time. The last thing I'll say is I want everybody to have fun. We got to make this fun. Sometimes Little League practices don't have to be baseball practices. They can be something else. Lots of resources on the league website for how to design and execute practices. I encourage you to use them because many of your parents are just going to disappear now that the kids aren't 12 years old anymore. They're not going to be at the games and they're not going to be at practice. So you're going to be on your own. So make it fun for your players. I really look forward. I hope I can get out on the field and umpire some of your games during the season. So Jim, that's what I've got. You probably have some, or Grayson might have some comments.
I have just some final thoughts, and just always think kids first. Who assures a safe and fun game for the kids? It's the adults, managers, coaches, umpires. The adults are the ones who set the example and need to work together. We have to get rid of this notion that there is a natural antagonism between umpires and managers and coaches. In Little League, we work together for the kids. And always remember, Little League is a youth leadership program. That's what we are, actually. We're a youth leadership program that uses baseball and softball to teach leadership skills. We could just as easily do it with field hockey or lacrosse. And in Rule 1 of the baseball rule book, the first sentence, Little League baseball in all divisions is a game. So let's emphasize that it is a game. It's a game for kids. Focus on the experience, not the outcome. So here's our contact information. Again, anything dealing with interleague, contact Grayson. Anything dealing with umpiring, please contact Dawn. If you have any kind of rules, questions, or concerns, please contact me anytime. Grayson, do you want to finish it?
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Don, for doing this. Very helpful. I actually learned a few things on balks. I want to echo what Don said. I want to thank everybody for stepping up and coaching your teams. Have fun. I coached my son in 50, 70 and juniors. It was his 2 favorite years that he played in Little League. Had a really good time. And lastly, I will, if you have any questions, again, contact me. I will be trying to make it out to every field at some point this year, just to take in the game, meet everybody again. And at that time, I can, again, make contact or communication with any questions they have. Thanks again. And Jim and Don, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, folks. See you out on the field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.